The moment her name appears on your screen after days or weeks of silence, your body reacts before your mind does. Your heart speeds up, your thoughts race, and one question takes over everything else. Why now? That single message carries more emotional weight than all the conversations that came before it, and how you respond in this moment quietly decides what happens next. Silence does something powerful to human psychology, especially in romantic dynamics. When communication stops, it creates a vacuum, and the mind hates a vacuum. It fills the empty space with stories, doubts, memories, and imagined outcomes. For women, silence doesn't simply feel like absence, it feels like uncertainty. And uncertainty is where emotional attachment either dissolves or intensifies. When she reaches out after silence, it's rarely random. Even when the message looks casual, light, or meaningless on the surface, there is almost always an emotional process that led her there. What most men don't realize is that the silence didn't pause her feelings. It forced them to reorganize. And by the time she reaches out, she's already been through several internal phases you never saw. At first, silence often triggers confusion. She wonders what changed. She replays conversations, searching for missed signals. Then confusion slowly turns into interpretation. She starts assigning meaning to your absence. Was it disinterest, emotional withdrawal, or quiet confidence? This is where attraction can either weaken or deepen depending on how your silence was framed in her mind. If she felt you disappeared because you were needy, upset, or hoping to provoke a reaction, attraction usually drops. But if your silence felt grounded, calm, and unreactive, something very different happens. Curiosity replaces certainty, and curiosity is one of the strongest emotional drivers there is. By the time she reaches out, she is often testing something, not always consciously, but emotionally. She's testing whether the dynamic has shifted. She's testing whether you're still emotionally available on demand. She's testing whether the silence changed you or if you're exactly where she left you. This is where most men make their first mistake. They respond too fast, too emotionally, or too eagerly, not because they lack self-control, but because the message feels like relief. Silence creates tension, and her reaching out feels like the release of that tension. But responding from relief instantly gives away emotional leverage you didn't even know you had. Female psychology is deeply attuned to emotional pacing. It's not about games or manipulation. It's about nervous system regulation. When you respond in a way that mirrors her emotional intensity too quickly, her system doesn't feel grounded. It feels chased. But when you respond calmly, steadily, and without emotional urgency, something subtle shifts inside her. She begins to feel that the silence didn't weaken you. It clarified you. This doesn't mean ignoring her or acting cold. Coldness signals emotional injury. Calmness signals emotional strength. There's a difference, and women feel it instantly. The tone you choose matters more than the words you use. A short, composed response carries far more psychological weight than a long, emotional explanation ever could. Another thing most men don't see is that when she reaches out, she's often unsure herself. She may be curious, nostalgic, conflicted, or simply checking emotional temperature. She might not even know what she wants yet. Your response helps her decide. If you respond with explanations, justifications, or emotional unloading, you make that decision easy for her. You become predictable, familiar, safe in a way that lacks polarity. But if you respond with presence instead of pressure, with openness instead of expectation, her mind stays engaged. This is where uncertainty works in your favor. Healthy uncertainty doesn't create anxiety. It creates intrigue. It invites her to lean in emotionally instead of leaning back to protect herself. There's a counterintuitive truth here that most people never talk about. The goal is not to make her feel reassured immediately. The goal is to make her feel emotionally comfortable staying curious. Reassurance closes loops. Curiosity keeps them open. As the conversation unfolds, pay attention to pacing more than content. Does she ask questions? Does she bring up shared memories? Does she test emotional depth or keep things light? These are signals, not accidents. And how you meet those signals matters. Matching her energy does not mean matching her speed. It means matching her emotional tone while maintaining your own center. When you stay grounded, you invite her nervous system to settle around yours. That's where attraction rebuilds naturally. About halfway through this message, I want to pause for a moment. If you're finding yourself recognizing patterns, understanding things you felt but couldn't explain, this is exactly the kind of psychological insight we explore here. Take a second and subscribe to the channel, not as a favor, but as a way to keep sharpening your emotional clarity and self-control in moments that truly matter. Now let's go deeper, because the most important part happens after the initial response. Once she senses that you're not reactive, not resentful, and not over-invested, her internal dialogue changes. Instead of asking, "Does he still want me?" she begins asking, "Why doesn't this affect him the way I expected?" That question is powerful. It shifts the emotional frame entirely. At this stage, many women become more emotionally expressive. They may open up, reminisce, or subtly probe for reassurance without directly asking for it. This is where emotional intelligence matters most. Offering warmth without attachment, interest without dependency, presence without pressure creates a dynamic where she feels safe exploring connection again. It's also important to understand that reaching out does not automatically mean readiness. Sometimes it's just emotional curiosity. Sometimes it's a moment of vulnerability. Sometimes it's nostalgia. Your job is not to label it too quickly. Your job is to stay emotionally steady and allow clarity to reveal itself. When men rush to define the situation, they collapse possibility. When they stay present and observant, they allow emotional truth to surface. One of the biggest mistakes is bringing up the silence too soon, asking why she disappeared, explaining how it made you feel, or seeking closure in the middle of re-engagement shifts the energy backward. It anchors the interaction in the past, instead of letting it evolve forward. Female psychology responds best to emotional safety paired with emotional freedom. When she feels she can approach without being interrogated or claimed, she relaxes. And relaxed attraction is far more sustainable than forced reassurance. There's another layer here that's rarely discussed. When you respond well after silence, you're not just influencing her feelings, you're reshaping your self-image. Each calm, grounded response reinforces your own emotional discipline. That confidence doesn't come from outcomes, it comes from self-trust. Eventually, the dynamic reaches a turning point. Either her investment grows or it fades naturally. And here's the truth most people avoid. Both outcomes are wins when you handle it correctly. Because the goal isn't to keep someone at all costs. The goal is to stay aligned with your emotional standards. When she senses that you're not clinging to a specific outcome, her respect for you increases, regardless of where the connection goes. Respect is the foundation attraction stands on, especially after emotional distance. As things move forward, let curiosity guide you more than hope. Let presence replace expectation. Let consistency replace performance. This is how attraction rebuilds without force. And if at any point you feel yourself becoming anxious, overthinking, or emotionally reactive, that's information. It's not a failure. It's an invitation to pause, regulate, and return to center. Emotional mastery is built in moments like these. As we come to the end, remember this. When she reaches out after silence, the message is not the moment. Your response is. It tells her who you are now, not who you were before the silence, not who you hope to be, but who you are in emotional reality. If this perspective helped you see things differently, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. There are deeper layers to this dynamic, subtle signals most people overlook, and powerful shifts that happen when you stop reacting and start leading emotionally. The next conversation you have might feel simple on the surface, but underneath it, something much bigger could be unfolding.